So we were just talking about examples, though, where people will obey an authority figure. The experimenter, the doctor in that situation, we will agree to do whatever an authority figure asks of us. But we also tend to comply and agree to requests where people don't really have authority over us. So there are a couple different reasons. How do we get people to comply with requests we have if we don't have authority? We're going to talk about 4 different strategies. So, think about these if you're ever trying to request something of someone. The first is reciprocation. This idea that like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It's this feeling of obligation to give something back to people who have given to us. So you lent me money when I needed it, so I'll lend you money when you need it. If I gave you a gift for your birthday, so you gave me a gift on my birthday. Reciprocity. But there's also some more complex strategies as well. So this is a door in the face technique, where you get someone to comply with the request you want, the target request, by first asking something really large and unreasonable. So, for instance, let's say you really need $10. You could go up to someone and say, hey, can I borrow $100? To which most people would be like, no. And then you're like, okay, can I borrow 10? And they're like, fine. So it's following up an extravagant request with something more reasonable, such that the person feels guilty and complies. So it's named after the idea that you have something, you ask something unreasonable, someone slams the door in your face, so you follow up with something more reasonable, and the person complies. This is often seen in things like price haggling. So if you're trying to come, and haggle to a price you're willing to pay for an item, you might haggle strategically way lower than you actually want, or way higher than you actually want, I don't know, knowing the person will say no. So then you get to the actual amount you're looking for. Things like asking favors, like, hey, like, would you mind like watching my kids for the weekend? And they're like, that's a lot. You're like, how about if you just babysit for tonight? And they're like, okay, I can do that. And that's all you really needed of them. Yeah, so this is a strategy. Asking big and then getting to the smaller request you actually want. But there's also the opposite. So this is called the foot in the door technique, which is where you offer a small request first. And once you get compliance with that small request, you then follow it with compliance for a larger request. So the idea that like once your foot is in the door, it's a lot easier to convince someone to let your whole body in, right? So for instance, let's say it's your boss's birthday at work. So if someone comes up to you and says, hey, would you sign this card for our boss? And you're like, okay, I can sign a card. And they're like, great, would you chip in money that we can buy him a present? So it's starting with a smaller request and you're like, okay, I've already shown that I'm willing to do things. And so when they ask a little bit larger, we have that, cognitive consistency desire. So we're like, okay, I guess I should stay consistent and also say yes to this. This is seen a lot in when people go to restaurants, share foods. So like you might say like, oh, can I try a fry? Can I have a bite of your cheeseburger? You just got to keep eating fries and food off that person's plate once they say yes to one thing. And the last thing we're going to talk about is a strategy called lowballing. So this is when you get someone to commit to something, and once they've committed, you increase the terms. So starting low, then asking more of that person because they want to, maintain cognitive consistency, so they'll go along with it. And this is super popular in things like car salesmen, who might ask you, like, okay, like they get you to commit to this car, you agree to buy it, and then they might say like, oh, do you want this like added on feature? How about we, add on these different fees or prices? Once you've committed to the car, it's easier for them to tweak and add stuff because they know you're already interested. So let's test our skills. I'm going to put these down below again, and I want you to tell me what strategy is being used in each of these persuasion examples.